Hello everyone, thanks for coming along. I think we will get started now. If others join, they can just sneak in at the back. Thanks for making it here in this delightful weather. Definitely a true Oslo summer. So I'm just going to say a few words to introduce this, and then we'll get straight into the content. Thanks for coming along. Welcome to this funding acquisition workshop that we're running through this CIENS Early Career Network. Okay, that doesn't want to.
Okay. I was talking back and forth.
Yeah.
Well, now it should work from now. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect, yes. So I'll start off by just briefly introducing this CIENS Early Career Network to those of you that haven't already been introduced to it. And I'll also talk a little bit about what CIENS is. It's not always something that's known to everybody. So CIENS is actually a strategic research collaboration through 7 different institutes and universities that are kind of engaged in the sort of broad areas of environment, climate and society. During last year, we decided to set up this early career network to try and engage the people who identify themselves as being kind of early in their career and share often some common challenges and sort of the same sort of opportunities and often optimism to try and kind of get together and collaborate or network towards future opportunities. We invite everybody who would like to join this. If you've not already signed up to the mailing list, there's a QR code on the screen here. We've also dotted some around the room, so you can find out first about the new events that are happening. But what is it that we do? We organise different types of events, networking and also career and skill development workshops. We just started last year, but we've had a few already of these. So we've had a speed networking event, a workshop on data visualization from somebody from MIT's visualization group. We had a sort of networking event sort of centered around research proposals, and last month we had a science communication workshop as well. So if this is something that interests you and you want to come to more of these events, feel free to sign up. If you're motivated to perhaps help us organise some more of these events, also you can get in touch with Sophie at the bottom here if you are interested in joining the organising committee. So moving on to the workshop that we have today. So I'll just briefly go through the agenda before we get started. The hybrid version of this event has 2 blocks. So the first block, which is the first hour, that is the sort of mapping out the research landscape in Norway and Europe. So we have 2 representatives, Heidi and Per Magnus, from the Norwegian Research Council here, and they will give some presentations on the national level and European level funding opportunities for early careers. How we'll do this is we'll run the presentations back to back, and then we'll have a sort of joint Q&A session at the end. So hold any questions that you have from the first presentation till the end of that session, and then we'll do them all together. The second block will be insights from some established CIENS researchers. So we've invited 2 speakers. We have Solveig and Luca. These are 2 people from within the CIENS network who have an established track record of successful funding acquisition. So we invited them to share some lessons learned, tips and tricks so from their own journey. For those of us joining in person, we also have some in-person activities after. So at 3 o'clock, we have a networking activity for anybody who would like to join. So this gives us an opportunity to kind of get to move around, meet some of the people in this room and talk about some of the things that we've learned. And after this, at 5 o'clock, we have a monthly social get-together with this early career network, and you're all very welcome to come along to this. It's at Brig in the centre from 5 o'clock. Without further ado, I will pass on to Heidi, who will start this first block on this mapping out the research landscape. So over to you, Heidi.
Hi, the sound is working, everyone? Awesome. So my name is Heidi, as she said, and I'm a team leader for FriPro, which is what I will talk most about today. And I will also talk a little bit about international mobility funding opportunities at the Research Council, from the Research Council. So FriPro, definitely a Norwegian word or acronym. It's from Fri Prosjektstøtte in Norwegian. It's like free projects or independent projects is what we call it, or used to call it. And what is it? It's curiosity-driven, bold research. There are no limitations on research discipline or topics. It's not controlled by any politicians or led by any politicians saying that you have to apply for this specific thing. It's just your ideas. It has to be proper research, not just development, not continuation of something that you know will work. It has to be properly bold, or what in some areas it's suitable to call it high risk, high gain. We want those kinds of applications. If there's no risk, it's not research in my book. And I'm hearing my breathing, so let's try this way. It's for basic and applied science, although most of the projects are more basic science than applied. In this year we're gonna fund projects for about 900 million crowns. The budget, and we will do that in 4 different rounds. The first being in 2 days, actually. Announcement next week. And we estimate a 15% success rate this year, but that is a very uncertain number because we don't know how many applications you will submit yet. It's only for research organizations, such as all the ones in the CIENS network, so approved Norwegian research institutions. And also, you can collaborate with other approved Norwegian research institutions and research institutions in other countries that would have been approved if they were in Norway, like the same types of institutions. So, of course, all universities and standard research institutes. Contact us if you're uncertain, if someone you would like to collaborate with, if they are at that type of organization. So you cannot collaborate with or have any participants in the project from any businesses and not private persons. So someone who's retired and do not have any connection with the university or institute anymore, they cannot participate in a project. You can, of course, buy like analysis services and things like that from companies as subcontractors, but they cannot have access to the research results or participate in the research itself. So that is an important limitation for this funding scheme. The Research Council has other opportunities if you wish to collaborate with business entities. And I will not go through them today, but if you have questions about it, you can contact me afterwards and I will send you to the right person to talk to. So FriPro has, we have 3 different calls for proposals that together they make a kind of a career ladder. The first one being a 3-year mobility project. It's funding for 1 person. It's at postdoc level, but you don't have to be employed as a postdoc, but it's at that level. You can apply right after you submit your PhD thesis. It doesn't have to be approved when you apply, but you have to have an approved PhD before the project starts. Like 5 minutes after you submit it, you can submit your application to this. It's a 3-year project where you spend 2 years abroad and the 3rd year in Norway. The second step of the career ladder is researcher projects for early career scientists. It used to be called Young Research Talents, or researcher projects for young talents, different names, different years. But it's basically the same thing as it used to be for those of you who have heard of it before. 2 to 7 years experience after a PhD. So that's after your PhD defense date. So the day you actually defended your PhD, not the day the PhD was approved, not the day you delivered it, but the day you defended it. And if you did your PhD in a different country, we will figure out which day is kind of the correct one to calculate from. So contact us and ask if you're uncertain. Project period is 3 to 4 years, 4 to 8 million. That can include payroll for yourself or part-time for yourself. And it can include a PhD or postdoc. Of course, 8 million isn't enough for the standard rates for 3 years for you and a PhD or postdoc, as the rates are now. But with some funding from the university or only partial position for you, or a 2-year researcher position in a project, it's doable. The third step of the career ladder is research project for experienced scientists. I assume that you will be in one of the 2 first categories, but I'll mention the third one as well. It's for PIs with at least 6 years experience after a PhD, 3 to 8 year projects, 4 to 12 million Norwegian crowns. So for a slightly larger group, or it can be also projects that are not full-time projects, but over a longer period of time. Some areas of research, getting data over a long period of time is essential, and that's why it's possible to have it over up to 8 years. We have ongoing application processing. You can submit your application at any time. And we spend, well, from 2 to 10 months to process your application. And whether it takes 2 months or 10 months depends, well, a fair bit on luck. We receive the application, so day 0 here, you submit your application. Then we check for any technical problems, like if you forgot to include a mandatory attachment, or check if you fulfill the criteria, things like that. If you don't, we send you an email and say, withdraw your application, fix the problem, and submit it again. And if you don't withdraw it, we say, well, we reject it and you can't apply in another year. So say yes to the withdrawal and fix it. And then we start figuring out which peer, well, we do a peer review. Well, not the employees at the Research Council. We find researchers around the world to assess your application. We have a database of reviewers who are willing to assess proposals, but of course they don't cover absolutely everything. So we need to get extra people sometimes. And that takes time. For some applications, the people we already have agreements with, they're suitable, they don't have any conflicts of interest, and they can just assess it. For others, it takes a while. They can assess one application or a group of 3, 4, 10, 15. It all depends on whether applications that have been submitted more or less at the same time or within 2-3 months, if they actually fit together for the same people. So if you're lucky and you're, like, we've already set a group of experts to assess a proposal, and your application fits right in there, it can be assessed just a few weeks after you submit it. And if you're even luckier, the funding decision, the group that does that, the portfolio board, which it's called, they may have a meeting just a few weeks after that. Then it's just 2 months. But for most, it will be like 6 to 8 months, something like that, until you get a response. And you can't plan to end up here in the 2-month category. Like, there's no way that any of you can figure out when to submit your application to kind of affect when you will get the response. So just write the application as best as it can be and submit it, and I'll get some patience. Yeah, I'll talk about qualified applications a bit later. You can apply between 8 and 18 months before you plan for the project to start. We recommend the shorter bit of that. if your project can start very quickly after you get a response. Like if you're not employing anyone new, if you're not dependent on like ships going to the Arctic at a certain time of year, something like that, then you can apply in the like the 8 to 12 month range. If you are dependent on such things, it may be smarter to apply a bit earlier. And if you do get a reply after 2 months and you were planning for like to start in 18 months, you can start it earlier. Just ask us and we'll say, sure. And you change everything in all the dates and things in the proposal, and we approve it. So that is not a problem. We're not as happy for approving it to start later. Of course, if we're at the 10-month end there, we may approve starting the project a bit later, but that is the main reason for allowing delays in when you start the project. But the other way, we're very willing to just say yes. Yeah, and we announce funding for new projects every other month, so every equal numbered month, so June, August, October, December this year. And a quarter of the budget every time this year, since June is the first one, but normally 1/6. So each proposal is assessed by a minimum of 3 peers. They are mainly generalists, so they don't usually do research in exactly the same thing that you do, or even very closely. I mean, they're in the same main discipline, but they are generalists. And think about that when, or if you write a proposal for FRIPRO. Don't expect specialists. They give each proposal a grade from 1 to 7, where 7 is the best, for each of 4 assessment criteria. The name of them are listed here on the slide, and they are described in the calls for proposals. And if you're considering applying, read them, every single word. And they will assess your proposal for every single thing listed in the assessment criteria. And if the proposal has any like faults or weaknesses in those assessment criteria, the grade will go down. And for FRIPRO, the minimum requirement, the qualification requirement, is that you get grade 6 or 7 on every criteria. So grade 5 on one of these and you're out. So make sure that you actually kind of respond to every single item in the assessment criteria in your proposal. That is one of the main mistakes in applications. So you kind of think, oh, I have a fantastic idea, and you describe the idea because you're super enthusiastic about that idea, but you forget to write who's going to do what in the project, as an example. So read things carefully. And we're talking about, like, you're applying for probably 8 million. It might be worth reading that 1 page of assessment criteria. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how the application is selected for funding. Something that is completely new within this funding scheme is that the portfolio board, they have decided a set of granting principles. It's kind of an automatic, it's not actually all automatic, but a rule set that removes any like considerations, any human decisions. It's just, if that, this project, if that, that project, like a rule set. We will put that rule set online next week, so you can read it if you want to. It's quite detailed, and some will find it very boring, but you can if you want to. It's not necessary to apply, but it describes how we're going to balance funding between each part, like each research domain, humanities and social sciences, life sciences, and physical sciences and engineering. So those three parts. So we ensure that there's funding for all three areas. And to ensure that we have funding for each career, each step of the career ladder. There's just ways of making sure that we have the money spread out like that, but still that the grades are the most important. So 75% of funds only cares about the grades, regardless of what kind of application it is. It's the top range of the applications. They're funded without even checking anything else. And the remaining 25% or more, if there aren't enough applications with the top grades, the rest is to balance out. So when we fund the applications, we also announce statistics, so you can see like how many got in each of these categories, what's the success rate for each category, and things like that. If you're curious, you can read a news case about that next week. We made some changes with this funding scheme last year. So the methods we're using now are quite new, which means that when you submit an application, you have a 1-year waiting period until you can apply again. That counts for everyone. All PIs for every project get 1-year waiting period. If your grades are low, you get an additional 1 or 2 year restriction period. So if the grades are very low and you apply for the experienced projects, you see all the way down at the right there, you can have 3 years altogether that you have to wait until you can apply again. We don't want to give anyone that type of restriction period, but we prefer to not receive applications that have not been worked well enough through before they're submitted. So try to make sure that your application is as good as possible before you submit it. And I'll just quickly show what will happen with different grades for an early career scientist. You submit an application 4th of October this year, get one of the top grades like 7776 for those 4 criteria. Your application is funded and you can apply again no sooner than 18 months before the date after the end date of the first project. So you can, in theory, have projects back to back. The middle person here get grades that are not good enough to get funded, but no submission restriction period, so only 1 year waiting. And the third person gets lower grades and has to wait 2 years. For the person who gets funded, there is an explanation here on when you can apply again. So in this case, it will be in June in 2 years. So like in the middle of the first project. Some recommendations. If you fulfill the criteria for more than one of the calls, we recommend going for the lowest part of the career ladder. But going abroad for 2 years is not an option for everyone. So then the early career scientist is recommended, even if you have 6 years since your PhD. Like if you're between 6 and 7 years, you can apply for either, but then we recommend the early career one. You have a greater chance of success there, is what our statistics show. And get others to read your application before you submit it, preferably someone who succeeded in FRIPRO earlier, and you have a greater chance of submitting a good application. What you need to remember if you're going to apply, read the entire call, from the first word to the last one. Do not do as you do with emails and only read like the first 3 words. Read the actual whole thing. It's long and a bit boring, but read it. And I would recommend reading it before you start writing an application and before you submit it, because there are different things that are important in those 2 parts of the process. Make sure you fulfill the requirements and attachments. So project description, of course, your CV. You can include CVs for other project participants if you want. It's up to you which ones you want to include. And to fulfill the criteria, I mean, for the early careers, you have 2 to 7 years after a PhD, but if you have any statutory leaves of absence, like parental leave, military service, things like that, you can subtract time for that. So you can probably apply until you're like 8 years or something after your PhD if you've been away for a while. If you're applying for the mobility grant, you need an invitation letter and a recommendation letter. And do not submit collaboration agreements. Don't spend time on them. We delete them. They're not read by anyone. It's complete waste. And if you refer to them in the application, the peers will just ask, where are they? And we will say if they're not allowed to submit them, assess on what you have. And that usually ends up being a bad grade. Typical weaknesses: badly defined or non-existent hypothesis, weak or missing risk assessment, like if your first ID doesn't work, what are you going to do then? Write it. The assessor can't guess or assume anything. They just have to give grades based on what you actually write. And who will do what and when is a very, very common mistake. You write what you're going to do and who's going to participate, but not who's going to do what. And then they're wondering, how much time is that person going to participate? Like for 1 week or a full-time position? Isn't written. Lacking descriptions of the methods you're going to use. And if you have data sets that you're going to generate or use, what are they for? How are they going to like solve your hypothesis or give you an answer to that? And then one slide on mobility. So that's my last minute probably. The Research Council has a call for research days abroad for PhDs, postdocs, and early career PIs in FRIPRO. You can get funding for 3 to 12 months abroad. You get funding for travel, stay, and tuition, and if it's for a postdoc, up to 1 year payroll as well. It's an open enrollment call, so you can submit applications at all times. Or the PI for the Research Council funded project can submit the application on behalf of the PhD or postdoc. It's a requirement that the PhD or postdoc is funded by the Research Council in a Research Council project with at least a 2-year employment period and have their payroll covered by us. This call does not cover people in research centers, such as Centers for Excellence. They have funding for that in the center. So if you're hired in a center, talk to them. It's 100% success rate if you actually submit a proper application. Like there's no grading system. It's just if you fulfill the criterion, actually write when you're going to leave or be somewhere, you will get funded. So read the call. They receive a lot of applications that do not fulfill the criteria, and they get them in return, like fix them and send them again. So just do it right the first time. Much better for everyone. If you have questions about FRIPRO, send an email to this address.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Heidi. We'll move straight on to Per Magnus, who will tell us a bit more about the European funding landscape now.
Yes, thanks for inviting me. Can you hear me in the back and out there somewhere? That's good. Yes, Per Magnus Konatvold. I see some familiar faces, both EU advisors and people who have attended ERC proposal reading days. That's nice that you're preparing. I think there will be a lot of similarities in what I am describing on the EU, on the European level, because the Research Council of Norway actually has adapted a lot from the ERC, from the mores for those secure actions. But not all rules are similar. So you need to read the documentation and call also for the EU actions, right? Oops. Yeah. So why, and I think I need to be quick, why should you apply for the MSEA, the MARI, Skłodowska-Curie actions, or the ERC? Well, actually, 1/4 of the budget of the EU Framework Program for Research and Innovation, Horizon Europe, is dedicated to the ERC and the MSEA. 1/4. That's a lot of funding for bottom-up and independent research. Both the MSEA and the ERC are open to all domains. It's you who decide the topic of your project. So it's completely bottom-up in both lines. Of course, this is perhaps not relevant for you, but at least for those who are supervisors, they might recruit very good or even excellent PhD students or postdocs in the MARI Curie actions. When it comes to the ERC, you get generous funding for quite a lot of time. Having the Research Council of Norway FRIPRO on your CV is very good. I would dare to say that internationally, the MARI Skłodowska-Curie actions and the ERC is more reassuring in a way. Not comparing, the quality, but it's more well known. And both in the MSEA and the ERC, there are annual calls, at least up until 2027, and probably in the next framework program as well, which goes by the name of FP10 by now. Yeah. Some of you may have seen the structure of Horizon Europe, the framework program, with the budget of, I think now it's up for 97 billion euros from 2021 up until 2027. And this is where you find the MSEA and the ERC, namely in Pillar 1, it's called Excellent Science. You need to be aware of this when you apply, that you are applying in, not in a vacuum. It's not just, EU doesn't throw billions of euro at you because they think research is so great. Research and innovation activities is a means to reach a goal for the EU. So you need to understand, even though you're applying for an open arena, you need to understand that if you can tie it to policy goals, etc., it's useful. So see the bigger picture. I'll start with the MSEA. I'm sorry, I'm looking back because old men can't easily look at the screen, I must admit. So the MSEA has been the flagship program for funding research training and researcher mobility since 1996. It has funded far more than 145,000 researchers. And it's international, it's intersectoral, if it's good for your project. And it can be interdisciplinary, the 3 I's. Also, when it comes to the MSEA, you need to understand the policy backdrop, and you find some things about this here. New of this year is that when you apply for MARI Curie Actions postdoctoral fellowship, you need to write how you are going to green your project, how it will adhere to the principle of the MSEA Green Charter, which again is derived from the European Green Deal. So this is something that you're not actually evaluated on it, but when it comes to similar proposal grade levels, then that can be a difference. The MCA in these years in Horizon Europe look like this. Half of the 6.6 billion euro will go to fund doctoral students. But I guess most of you are more interested in the next one, the postdoctoral fellowships, which I will focus on. There's also funding for staff exchange, co-funding of PhD and doctoral programs, and outreach activities. So now you see I've nicked some slides from the call coordinator for the postdoctoral fellowships in the Research Executive Agency in Brussels. And there is a call open right now with a deadline on the 11th of September. And I've taken away the TBC to be confirmed, because now it's confirmed. And you see the objective: enhance the creative and innovative potential of researchers holding a PhD and acquire new skills through advanced training, international, interdisciplinary, and intersectoral mobility. So here you hear all these, the fad words that you need to have in your mind when you're preparing your proposal. The contracts are mono beneficiary, one researcher, and one main host organization. If it comes to global fellowships, meaning going outside of Europe, you also need a host institution in this third country. The host organizations must be in an EU Horizon Europe associated country, like Norway. Norway is an associated country. But you can also have a host organization in another country in Europe. And those who apply, they can be of any nationality when they apply for a European fellowship. But if you're applying for a global fellowship, then the eligibility criteria are a little bit more difficult. You guys will get these presentations afterwards, so I will just skip a couple of slides. But I want to show you this. These are the evaluation criteria, and they actually form the structure of the questions in the template, the proposal template that you need to answer. And as you can see, you are evaluated on excellence, but it's weighted only 50%. You will also be weighted on the impact of your project. And actually, the strongest impact is not scientifically or towards society. It's actually on how will this project of yours actually mean that you will be employed by an employer after your fellowship. So you need to be aware of this. And the competition is fierce, which means that you need to take proper care and attention to each of the evaluation criteria. Common errors, you can read this later on. Norwegian institutions, in fact, do well in the postdoctoral fellowships. We have a success rate on average or above average of the EU success rate. And this is mainly because the institutions are quite good at giving you advice. Here are some relevant web pages, and I'll just jump on the Marie Curie actions. I'll just jump to the ERC because I guess some of you might be interested. Have some of you even applied to the ERC? And that's another thing. If you apply to FRIPRO, if you apply to the Marie Curie actions or to the ERC, be aware that some are successful the first time, but most aren't. I've seen great professors, Nobel Prize winners who haven't succeeded. What they do, because this is an open arena, is that they resubmit. They get an evaluation summary report saying what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses of the proposal. Of course, they're angry at first, but after some months, they start restructuring the proposal, and they might be lucky and succeed. So the basics on the ERC is that it's support to investigative-driven frontier research. So this is not about collaboration by one principal investigator and his or her team to do a project that moves the research front. It used to be high risk, high gain, and now it's more about high gain. If you have a project that isn't very risky, but will give a high gain, they will love it. So if it's risky, okay, that's good. As Heidi said, risk is a part of research in science, but you don't have to have high risk. But there's a need to be high gain. Yeah. There's only one evaluation criterion, and that is scientific excellence. And it's measured on your idea, primarily, and to a certain degree also on you as the PI. Your qualities, how you can convince the panels and the evaluators that you're able to do the project and hopefully reach the objectives of your project. These are the types of grants, and you can see the similarity to FRIPRO, MSEA Global Fellowships, FRIPRO Mobility Scheme, starting grants, and consolidator advanced grants for those who are more experienced. The starters, 2 to 7 years after the successful completion of your PhD, consolidators, 7 to 12 years. And you get between 1.5 to 2 million euro for up to 5 years, depending on what scheme you choose. And you have to dedicate half or a little bit less on consolidator of your time on the project. There is also some, I said this is not about collaborative research, but you actually have the possibility to do it to a certain degree in the synergy grants, which are the most prestigious ERC grants. 2 to 4 principal investigators at all experience levels can go together because you have an idea, a project which is so bold and ambitious that one PI cannot succeed alone. So, and you can get up to 10 million euro. This you can read for yourself afterwards, I think, because we need to have time for some questions. The evaluation criterion, I mentioned it. Have a look at it. This is, don't take any photos, don't spread it because it's not official yet. It will leak, always leak to you guys about what is coming up. So the work program will be published soon, and these are the deadlines coming up. And my colleague Berit, Sundby Avset, and we are the national contact points. And of course, we are happy to be in contact with you, but you also have very good advisors at your local institutions. So always go through your EU advisor at your institute or university. You can follow us on these Twitter/X handles, but since this is a dying platform, you can also search me up at LinkedIn, because I've gone over to put most of the more immediate news on LinkedIn. So you can follow me on LinkedIn. And finally, we have made a recording of a webinar, ERC for Beginners, where we explain more in detail all the basics, because we see that those who apply and those who go to our workshops, etc., may not have understood the difference between the ERC, Morris Skłodowska Q reactions, and how to apply to other parts of Horizon Europe. So have a look at that. Last 25 minutes. I think it's useful. It's just weird to see yourself on a thing like that. But for you, that'll be like now. So I think with that, I will finish. And
excellent. Thank you very much for that, Magnus. So we'll move now on to a Q&A block. And I think that's the time. So we'll use this microphone as a roving microphone in the room, but those joining online, just feel free to type in the chat and we'll also read those out. I'll give this microphone to Martina, who will bring it round, but just raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question to one or both of the presenters, and we can have a bit of a Q&A session.
And, oh yeah, that's one. I thought you understood it all. That would be amazing.
Actually, just a question to Heidi regarding the waiting time.
Yep.
So is it very individual, or so people submitting on the same time will have roughly the same answer? So if I submitted on February and other people submitted on the same time, will we have the same waiting time?
Well, the waiting time is when you will be able to apply again. But if you're talking about the time until you get the response,
Yes,
I mean,
yeah.
if you get funded or not. No, the two of you sitting beside each other, if you submit an application the same date, one of you may receive an answer in 2 months and the other one in 6, 8, 10 months. It depends on whether we find reviewers quickly or takes longer.
And just for the mobility call, so does the PhD need to be funded in Norway, or so?
For the 3-year mobility grant, it's to stay. It's on the postdoc level, so you need to have a PhD before, but you don't have to. I mean, you don't need to have done your PhD in Norway, but you need to have a connection with Norway. There are details in the call, so the exact periods you need to have been in Norway and things like that. But you don't have to have the PhD from Norway.
Okay,
but it's something else.
Thank you very much.
Also for Heidi, I think maybe before I read that there's an age limit also for the free pro, but you didn't mention it.
We used to have it, but we don't have it anymore.
Oh, lucky for us older people. Quite general question, I think. How long time does it take from you start writing, like you have an idea, from start writing your application to delivering the application? Like,
Do you know?
No, I mean, it's so individual, but I mean, the main thing is start early, because it does take time to understand, and it does take time, to polish the diamond. I would say applying for Marie Curie Action postdoctoral fellowship, 3 months, perhaps. I've experienced some starting writing it 3 weeks before and succeeding. It's not normal. I mean, that's not the rule. That's not the rule at all. An ERC grant, add some more months. Sure.
I would say probably more 3 to 6 months for projects, but it also depends on whether you're collaborating with someone. Or if you're applying for a mobility grant, it's just for you. Of course, you're gonna visit someone and get something from them. But the proposal is mainly yours. You don't need input from a lot of people. But if you're applying for a grant that is more of a group or more people participating, it takes time to get their input. Plan for time for that. Like, people take time to respond.
So you mentioned for the ERC one that one of the criteria is PI excellence, and does that come into the FreePro like implementation thing, and also what kind of things are they looking for?
Yeah, I would say to a certain degree is, I mean, they want to see, the quality of what you have done, and they want to see that you are the correct PI for the project. And of course, to be able to implement the project is important. So you need to show that you are an efficient person. So yeah.
And yeah, the assessment of the PI is part of the implementation criteria in FreePro. So it's the criteria have the implementation and impact criteria have two parts each for implementation. One part is the actual implementation of the project, like who's going to do what and risk and things like that. And the other part is the PI and group. And for impact, it's worth noting that to have a planned societal impact. But if you mention it, you will be assessed on it. So if you don't want your project to be assessed on societal impact, don't mention it. Like if you mention this, and it may be fantastic to solve like cancer, and you haven't described anything on how, you'll get a low grade because of that. It's better to not mention it.
Yeah, thank you both very much. This may be a very basic question, but I always wonder, let's say you are employed now here in Norway, and that employment ends, let's say half a year before the project starts that you're applying for funding for, and that's say a 50% of your position funding. So what happens then if you actually no longer are affiliated to the institution where you submit the application in the meantime while it's being assessed?
Well, for FreePro, we have no requirements of where you're employed or whether you're unemployed when you apply. But the application has to be approved by a Norwegian research institution, like that they will hire you temporarily or permanently for the duration of the project. But you can be working at a grocery store when you apply if you want to, or if you have to.
Is that same for ERC?
Yes, basically, it's the same for the ERC. When it comes to molecule reactions, you don't have to, you can be unemployed when you apply, but for the duration of the fellowship, you need to have the okay from a host institution. Not in Norway, somewhere else when it comes to these fellowships, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the presentations. On the assessment criteria for, what you showed for FreePro, for ERC, again, I think like what we talked about, maybe if it's in the video which you said, share the link, then maybe one should just let me know. But in terms of part B, 2 parts of ERC applications. So one gets appraised. Is it the same criteria for the both, or is it different? And also in terms of like excellence, in terms of publication. So it, so I think a little more on that.
Yeah, well, the proposal to the ERC consists of 3 parts: the administrative part, and the B1, which is 5 pages, and the B2, which is 14 pages. The same criteria applies, but the B1 is more this is where you sell your idea and yourself in to the panel, so that the panel will keep you for the next step, because there's 2-stage evaluation. In the next step, the panels and external evaluators will look at your complete proposal, that there is coherence between B1 and the complete proposal, where you also describe other things as you know. So yeah.
Is that a call for here?
No.
This question is to the both of you. Each of you presented opportunities for both PhD and postdocs, but are there any opportunities for those with a master's degree? And
No.
Yes. There are a lot of opportunities. Half of the MSCA budget goes to the doctoral training networks. And in the call for 2024, I think 140 projects were funded. They will each receive funding to pay for 15 PhD students each in up to 3 years. And they are obliged to announce all their positions on the Euraccess jobs portal. So Euraccess jobs, that's where you go to find MSCA PhD positions. And also if the project is funded by the ERC or other parts of Horizon Europe, they are also obliged to put these positions there. There are a lot of positions, and of course they roll on throughout the year. So, I mean, you really have a lot of possibilities.
So if you have a master's degree and you want to do a PhD, you can do one within the FRIPRO project, but you cannot apply for one as a PI. So someone else will apply for it, get a grant, and then they announce the positions. So people can apply for PhD positions. And in FRIPRO projects, they can also have running costs for master students doing research in the project, not payroll for master students because they don't get paid in Norway, but for the running costs for them. So FRIPRO projects may include master students as well, but only the running costs for them, like lab costs or travel or things like that, but they can't apply themselves.
Excellent. Thank you very much. If we can give another round of applause to our we will now take just a quick sort of 10-minute break, so you can grab some coffee, go to the toilet if you need to, and then we'll come back in here at 10 past the hour to start the next block. And so we'll see you in approximately 10 minutes.
The new one. Is that our remote control?
Yes, this is the new one. But nothing to do with
Okay,
this.
should we change that now?
No, I just switch. Because I have his one.
Ah, great, perfect.
Just single display. So I just do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Click on.
I was like,
Annan på.
Okay.
Så det snackar.
I'll give you a signal when it's 5 minutes. Yes.
Because then they see you.
Okay, we're going to get started with the second block now. So we've heard a little bit about the funding landscape that is available to apply for, and now we're going to hear some tips and tricks from those who've already gone through this process themselves. So I'll introduce Solveig, who will take the first presentation, and then similar to the first block, we'll move straight on to the second presentation and have a Q&A session again at the end. So if you've got any questions for Solveig, hold on to those and we'll come back to them at the end. Over to you.
Thank you. And it's funny how you're young in this business until you're suddenly established. So there's a quite short period in between when we wait for the answer for the application. I called my presentation "How to Win a Lottery" because that's how it feels when you're applying for research funding. My experience comes from Research Council of Norway. I've been in some EU applications, but not the ERCs. So I don't have that much experience with that. And I haven't led an EU application. So, but I've applied for quite a lot of research projects. Most of them on the specific calls, and also now on FreePro, and I got the FreePro project last year. So I thought I was going to say a little bit about the initial stages of the proposal. And it's true what they said before, it takes a lot of time to make a good proposal, but a lot of that time is not writing, it's more thinking. So first, participate in other proposals if you can. So if you have the possibility to co-write proposals that someone else is leading, that's a very good experience. Read a call, and also the relevant documents that are referred to, because the call will have all these underlying documents that you can read. This is especially important if you apply for one of the specific calls, like not FreePro, but Klimaforskar, Utenriks, or the more specific calls. They have documents that are good to read and good to refer to also in the application. Make a realistic time assessment. I know that they don't have a specific deadline now, but do you really have time to write a good proposal? Because it takes time and you will need days that are not filled with meetings and teaching and all other kinds of things to really sit down and also gather the people that you need to make a good proposal. Get backing from your leaders and from the administration early in the process so that they know that you're doing the proposal and that they can help you because they've done this before. Gather a team. Think about who you would like to work with. Who would make it a better proposal. And also that is a person that you feel comfortable leading in a research project. But this is my most important advice, is to read other successful proposals and their evaluations. You can also read proposals that have gotten a good grade but not gotten the funding and the evaluations of what they should have done differently. But most importantly, look at how others nailed it. because it is really helpful. Even if it's a totally different research field, it helps a lot to see what a good proposal looks like. And then my other main advice is that the first page is the magic. You have to win the reviewer on the first page. Why is this important? Why is it important now? Why should this research be funded this year? It's like 10 or 5%, 15%, I think she said, that are funded. Why should you get the funding this year and not in next year or in 5 years? So put it in some scientific or current world context. And why are you the right person? That needs to be, maybe you don't need to write that specifically on the first page, but it needs to be shown in the proposal. These questions need to be easily answered for someone reading the proposal. So it's like the popcorn, you want more. When you read the first page, you want more. You want to find out who is this excellent person who's going to lead this excellent proposal. And then it's specifically for free pro young researchers. So this is the old, now it's called early career because they skipped the age limit for the proposals. So now you don't have to be young, which is good. I think I had to hand in some specific documents to show that I was younger than the age to be eligible. It was my last year. So I'm glad that they took this because it's quite artificial, the age limit in research. First of all, you need to show that you're the expert. Think American. How would an American person describe themselves as expert in this field? You're American?
I am American.
Yeah, you have an advantage. You have a cultural advantage in how to present. But I've done research proposals with lots of people from many countries, yeah. Americans have an advantage, since Americans and British, I would say, also social. That you have a different way of sort of bragging without bragging too much, which is what you need to do. You have to like find the edge of showing that you're excellent, but you shouldn't say things that are not true. So learn from other proposals. Again, this is something that you need to do throughout the process, have other proposals to look back on from the different parts. This is my experience and also the experience of the others that I know of that I work with that also have won the lottery, is that you build on your previous work, because that's your PhD work where you've already shown excellence, and find the frontier that you're the right person to lead. Yeah, that's also, it feels like a lottery when you don't win, and then when you get it, then it's of course not a lottery. It's of course you're the most excellent person. And get honest feedback on your drafts. And when I wrote that, remember that this is just your job. It's not you as a person that is getting criticism. And be open to the criticism from your peers and your colleagues, because it's better to get it from them than to get a bad grade from the reviewers. So if they cannot see the idea clearly, then the idea is not clearly enough stated in the proposal. It doesn't mean that it's not a good idea or an excellent idea, but you know what I mean. So just be open to all the criticism that you can get. You don't need to take it all in, but understand that it's there when you have your draft, and go home and do something else in between writing and think about other things.
get drunk or see a movie or. And as the people from the Research Council say, impact and implementation are important. It's important that you show that you have the capacity, both as a person and as a group, that you have the network, the scientific network and the societal network, if you're going to show that you have an impact on society. I got criticism on the first time I submitted, it was like, okay, great that you're going to have these workshops, but how do we know that people are going to come? So you need to show that. If you're going to write things in the newspaper, if you're going to be hosting seminars, talking to the embassy or whatever you're going to do, make sure that it shows in the proposal that this is feasible for the people that are going to do the work to actually get this done. And that you have a plan for how to lead a project and how to communicate to the scientific community and also others if you have that in the proposal. You will most likely have to apply several times. And the reviewers may have some good advice. They look, unfair when you get it, but which is also good with the waiting period, is that when you've submitted, you wait for several months until you get the answer. So it's not something that it's something that's sort of back there. So it's not that, it doesn't feel that bad as it would be with an exam where you get the results just a few days after or a few weeks after. It's and also in that waiting time, you may have thought of things that it would have been good to put into proposal. So time is sort of a friend in this way. And read what the reviewers say. Sometimes they don't say that much. That's, I think, is usually better with EU proposals. So maybe it's better with ERC than with FreePro, but sometimes the feedback that you get is really short. So then you can ask others how to improve for the next submission. So 6 months later, although you have almost forgotten about the proposals, you either get it or you have to resubmit your ticket to the lottery. And then you have to do if you get it, you have to do all the work. So then you have to kind of plan for that opportunity as well, and not get filled up with all kinds of other projects and tasks in the meantime, which is also a challenge. I think that's about what I wanted to say.
Excellent, thank you very much. We will then move straight on to the second presenter in this block. We have Luca, who's going to share some of his experiences next. Over to you, Luca.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Rachel, for inviting me. I never reflected how do I write proposals
because of the
camera.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can
Just be more connected.
I can adjust.
Okay, I need to go to this. Clear enough. Yes. So I did more a personal thing for you guys, and this fits well with what Solveig said. Everything she said is absolutely relevant, valid, so listen to her. And maybe this will give you a little bit more insight on how I did so far. I can use this button.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it works.
Okay, so just some words about me and maybe tell you why I'm here. I'm senior scientist at NIVAS, and now I've been working a few years there. I work mostly on multi or transdisciplinary projects. So it is a bit of different context than what you normally get on FreePro, and I often do work really at the edge of my comfort zone. So I never built on the things that I did before. Sometimes that happen, but most likely often I step into very new things for me. So it's a little bit different approach. I'm a natural scientist by background, but I work also a lot with the social sciences now and stakeholder engagement, knowledge brokerage. So I acquired and coordinated 7 NFR projects, 1 Horizon project, 3 Marie Curie, 2 as beneficiary and 1 as a supervisor. and one water JPI program. And I support my colleagues and even writing proposal. I successfully have one Marie Curie postdoc, and I helped a few people to apply on ERC. This Marie Curie postdoc now is second stage of ERC. So thank you very much, Rachel, to make me reflect, how do I write proposal? I do not have any lesson to share, but I can share my experience. So take it as for what it is. Some initial key take-home messages, which are to a large extent overlapping what Solveig just said. So writing a good proposal takes serious and dedicated time. And I go through many ranges of review, self-reviewing, but also reviews from external. A good idea hardly wins without a good presentation. So put emphasis in your storytelling. Different programs require different foci and efforts. So Free Pro, ERC is different from when you address a thematic call, very different. Winning means making your document popping up from a pile of many other good documents. Okay, and you win at page 1. I totally agree with that. Remember that your review does not live in your mind. So you win by explaining and by telling an exciting story. So that's how I try to depict. This is basically the template from the Research Council. It applies also to a large extent to the European ERC program and others, also the Horizon program in general. And that's how I partition my effort whenever I, so I put 60 to 70% of my time in part 1. I put 20 to 30% in the impact. The last part is the easy bit. You just have to remember not to forget to provide all the details. So, and this funnel shape, double funnel, something that I remember the way you write scientific paper is also applied, that's my opinion, to a large extent also for research proposal. So you need to have a big why, half a page of why and what. And then you restart from the broader perspective, funnel down, give the background needed to introduce your objective. You do not give in the background to show that you have a big knowledge. You give the background concisely and to the point. They will realize that you have the knowledge while doing that, and then you funnel down to then have a very, very precise and clear explanation of hypothesis and the research question. And then you describe how, which is the methodology. Okay. When you get to the impact, you reopen again, and you need to dream there. You need to show the ambition and to make a change in the academic, social, technological, and so on aspect. So I give you an example. This is the last proposal I wrote. It's currently under revision by the Research Council. It was a thematic call. This one was the global health. So I encrypted some words because there is my official NFR and Horizon here. So. Okay, this is my first page. I spent several days on this. Okay, I give also a graphic layout, and I think that is important. This is also a psychological thing to gather the attention. Imagine the reviewer have a pile of documents. Some of them are just text, some other, and then they will move across them, and yours will pop up visually. Okay, so I put some time and some space. Then I have this figure that for me is the big picture. Okay, this needs to be provide subliminal messages and provide the multiple perspective. That's why I put this prisma there. You need to show the why from a very articulated point of view. And this is not just writing what every expert will know, is show your expertise, but show that you are also able to have a new point of view. And then this first page is your chance to have the broadest perspective and also to quickly go down and present your research question here. And then I move on. At page 2, I just start again from the beginning. I start with the background. And as you can see, I often use text boxes. This is a text box. It tells me, for example, in transdisciplinary or multidisciplinary project, to have multiple dimensions. So the text is not anymore flat, it's not a one-dimensional thing. I try to make it multiple dimension. Text box and or conceptual figure helps. So in here, I provide a lot of numbers. This is the background. And you should ask yourself when you write the background and you write your why, or even the first page, does this material deserve potentially a publication as a perspective paper? If your answer is yes, then you have a good why. Then you're starting from the right point. If your document is just repeating what you have already heard in your academic debate or interaction in conferences, can still be good, but maybe you have something less. Maybe you will not be able to lift in your reviewer that, oh, wow, that's an interesting perspective. So a little bit of wow factor is interesting. You do not have to make like an artificial things. It needs to be reasonable. It needs to be something that everyone can, let me use the term buy, okay? So, yeah, ask yourself if you are able to give a convincing argument that your perspective is valid. Always ask, and ask your colleagues, your internal reviewers, or before you submit this kind of question, and really ask them to give you an honest answer. Without that, I would never succeed in any proposal. So it's never anymore a single man show, this one. It can be, sometimes it is, but less and less, in my opinion. Then this is the next page. Sorry for the many typo. I wrote this morning. So here I show how I assemble the work package structure. It needs to be as simple as possible. And after you put so much effort in defining your why and giving your background, the statement of the hypothesis needs to be as simple or as concise and linear as possible. You don't have to reboil it. Okay, so no more surprises for the reviewers at this stage on. At this point, it needs to be logical, and the reviewer needs to be able to clearly understand how does this link to your why. Another point is that these are all the graphical display I put in this proposal. So it's not a random choice of color, okay? This was the introductory picture, and this was the introductory picture. So each color that, in this case, depicts a scale of the system I want to. This applied for socio-ecological systems, okay? So local factory, this is a recycler of plastic in India, then the neighbor, and then the city. It could be any other topic, but you have multiple dimensions, and you can have any of your dimension of your proposal depicted with a color. Then I have the work packages that refer mostly to the orange part. And here is the background referring to that. And this is the experimental design referring to the orange part. Some good reviewer will notice this and will also help you to really understand how the elements of your proposal are connected. If at the end of your proposal you have an architecture that stands, is solid and clear, then it's also a signal for you that your proposal is a good construct. Okay, you are not, you are not yet at the draft level. It needs to be like a project. It is a project indeed, right? And then the impact section comes, and this is, as I said, is where you reopen the funnel. Is where you need to dream. You are allowed to dream. You need to be reasonable dreams, but still dreams. So if you are able to tell yourself you're convincing why you are proposing a work on that topic, then you are also able to write a strong impact section. So, and you will be able to name the user of your knowledge. And starting from there, you will be able to name them, describe in which way they will use and what will be the change you will produce. I found that the European Union had done some good work in explaining what does mean impact for a project. And I just, sorry for the quality of this screenshot, but I took some of the documents or the schemes, that the models that they provide in their, let's say, package and book package. So the impact here, you have the way they see that. So you have a policy maker, societal demand. There are people sitting there deciding what is needed to solve a certain problem or to achieve a certain development in the society. And they develop a key strategic orientation, impact areas, and research programs. And here is your project. And you go on the other way around. You have your project, your idea, the project results, outcomes. So you meet the policy here. Okay, that's why you do. When I define my why, I know about all this. Okay, that's why I make that why. I'm sorry for the use of words. So if you are addressing a thematic goal, you will be think about this when you start drafting your idea. While if you are addressing a free pro or ERC, which doesn't have to be dependent on ERC, you still have to suggest what are the societal demand that drives you. You still have a why, right? It could be totally curiosity driven, but even in that case, there must be a deep why that has some sort of relevance. And I guess this would add a little bit of quality in your proposal also in that case. And also this is very useful, is what the European Union adopt, but I believe also the Research Council is moving in this direction now. You can depict describe your impact in terms of societal impact, scientific impact, of course, societal impact, which includes also environmental impact, and economic technological impact. I try to use this framework, although the space in Norwegian grant for this is very reduced. But I think in that term. So get broad, expand your horizons, express your real ambition for making a change. You really need to see the importance of your project for the world. So you need to feel it. And this was the last thing I want to say, the dissemination is a small part in your very little space in the document. Then you have more space in the electronic form when we are talking about the Research Council. So for a project addressing a thematic goal, scientific publication, project website, social media are not enough. So if you have named users of your knowledge when you describe the impact, make sure that your dissemination is coherent with that landscape of stakeholder and users. So describe a communication and dissemination approach that connects your project results and output to them. This makes a coherent project. So for this, you can actually seek engagement with stakeholder, explain how you will do that. In some cases, actually, in a project where I collaborated with Rachel, we did before, while we were writing the proposal. It takes more time, but that was an Horizon project, so it was important to do that. For pre-pro or ERC grants, scientific paper and conference might be enough, but everyone will describe those kind of dissemination. So find a way to be original, show that you are different, that you are unique. So that's, I think, that was my last slide. And the last thing I wanted to say is I put a lot of feelings when I do these things. It's a form of art, if you want. It's an important text that doesn't get published. Very few people read it. When it's a text that can change your life as a professional life, as a scientist, right? So it is very important. You need to put enough time in that. And it's like preparing yourself for the Olympic Games. If you are an athlete, you will put all your effort in that. Don't underestimate it. It's very important. It can be trigger of your entire career and have an implication for your life. It's a fantastic opportunity that a country like Norway wants to give you a few million to fulfill your professional dreams. So use the chance. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like to invite Solveig back onto the stage, and it's the same drill as last time. So we have about 10 minutes available for a Q&A session. Martina will be around with a roving mic in the room, and for those online, just write in the chat and I'll read those out if you've got any questions.
Thank you very much for the very nice presentations. I was wondering about this magical first page. And Luca, you showed in your example that you put it in the excellence. And I was wondering if you should, if you would advise to write it like strictly like a scientific introduction of a paper, or to be a bit more creative, and how far can you go?
It needs to be different from the summary. So you also have a summary that would go on the electronic form in both cases, both ERC and also the NFR. So I don't repeat that. Here I emphasize the why more, and then I give it the last part of this alpha page. Here I propose to solve this gap in this way. Okay, so this is a more to introduce the why. That's what I do. I do not talk about how, for example, at all. While in the summary, you may mention that, and you may mention also the other elements of the proposal. So it is really about the driver and the motivation and rationale for your idea to be presented in this problem.
Yeah, I think it depends a little bit on the field of research. For some fields, it would be very important with a figure or sort of like a graphical summary. I put a quote from an important person that, like, sort of my project will help to address this problem that this important person has pointed out. So some people put that looks quite neat if you could put like a textbook with highlights or something in the beginning. I didn't have space for it, but that looks good. So I would advise that you look at different other proposals, also the thematic ones that you talked about. And I also I forgot to say that it came to my mind when you presented that you should look at the electronic form before the same day that you're. So have a look at the electronic form several days in advance, maybe even when you start, because there are lots of things that you fill in that are not in your proposal. So don't forget that, because it's very, very stressful if you find out like at 11:30 and the deadline is at 12.
Yeah, I want to say that
the milestones and all these.
My Indian proposal, I use a quote from Gandhi. Obviously.
Yeah.
Thank you for the nice presentation. I'm wondering for the EU Horizon project, it's always 45 page for the research plan. Do you have any suggestions? Where should we start? And which part should we focus?
It is, okay, the horizon is several months. It's
a two-stage.
Two-stage? Is a single stage or?
It's one stage.
My experience has been several months of work, most of the time spent in meetings and talk. And the most important thing is the ability of harvesting the ideas of others. You are the one that has the big picture in mind, so you need to steer that. So you start from there. Writing it is not different. The excellence part is just longer, but is very, very similar. And you need more space because you may have 20 partners, each one does something. So you need space to describe the approach. But I use the same approach as I would use for NFR to build up the quality.
No, I haven't. I've only participated in her. I haven't coordinated, but it's you need more time for the coordination. You need a lot of time to get all these partners together and their different languages and understandings, and so it's very time consuming. But I think it's for a researcher, it's always easier to write a longer one than a short proposal.
Good point.
So it's cutting in the end is a challenge usually.
Yeah, thank you both very much. So for everyone has mentioned the importance of consulting previously successful proposals. And we were just wondering, do we share them via informal networks, or are there also, let's say, databases available where these applications can be looked at?
I'm looking to you.
There are informal networks, that's for sure. And there are also some informal system utilizing formal organization.
Yes, I think it's important to have a look at successful proposals
even unsuccessful proposals might be very useful to read. But some institutions, they gather their proposals in a database, show them to you as potential applicants. I know this is done when it comes to Marie Curie actions, especially at the universities, of course. The institutes might have smaller access. Just wanted to mention that we have, when it comes to the ERC, we have an archive of approximately 70 successful proposals. And I travel around the country with this suitcase weighing 25 kilos. I'm going to get hernia from this job, but it's so useful. So you can sign up for these ERC proposal reading days. We announced them on the events page of the Research Council in Norway. And during the later years, we find it easy to get new proposals because those who attended these reading days, they give us their proposals. So that is, I mean, they are intended for those who are going to write a proposal to the ERC, but we don't check. So, I mean, as long as you're connected to a Norwegian institution, you can sign up and come there. And I think it's, I know some of you have been there already, so it's useful.
At CIENS we have an internal archive, so I can access all the applications that have gotten funding. And before we had the internal archive, you just ask the person. So if you don't know who won proposals at your institutions, ask someone in the administration, and then you ask the person directly. And when you've gotten the project, it's usually much easier to give away your proposal because yeah.
That looks like everything for the questions. I'd like to thank all the speakers once again for coming along and giving us extra presentation. And thanks to everyone here and online for your attention. I'll now move on to the next part of the presentation. So you guys, thank you so much for everything. You can go back down. So this concludes the hybrid part of this workshop. So those online, that's everything that we've got for you today, but we have a bit more for those in person, if you're able to stay a bit longer. Okay, so for those of you here, we thought it would be a nice opportunity, seeing as you're all here in person and you've been sat down looking at the front for the last 2 hours, to give you guys the opportunity to stand up, move around and meet some of the other people that are here, especially because we have so many institutes represented here today. There's probably a lot of people that you've not had the opportunity to meet. So we've created a networking activity for you to follow to structure this a little bit so that you don't have to approach some strangers and start a conversation just straight off the bat. The purpose is, as I've written here, is really to just get people mixing and meeting each other. We're all working on sort of vaguely, broadly similar topics, so we probably have some common interests. We're all on the same job, but the aim of this networking event is to get us to think a bit creatively and put a little bit of what we've just learned into use, and to start perhaps even considering some potential future research collaborations if there's other people in the room that happen to be working on a